Afternoon. Good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of Live Healthy Miami Gardens Facebook Live. It's our Lunch and Learn where we welcome the community in to hear what our topic of conversation is and to just really figure out what we need to do to stay as healthy as we can be. And we have a wealth of information here for you today. We are talking to Elise Carnegie. Did I say that right, Elise?
Carnegas. Close, very close.
Elise Carnegas. And she is with the CFCE, which is the Center for Family and Children Enrichment Center in Miami Gardens. And let me tell you a little bit about Elise, and then we'll go forward. And we'll talk about our topic today is how to take care of ourselves and our loved ones while recovering from a case of COVID through nutrition. And basically, we're also going to speak about how to stay well after COVID, because COVID isn't gone, folks. It may not be in pandemic mode, but COVID is still here. And we want to make sure that our audience understands that we should not take things lightly. As you go out and you mix with people, you don't know. People don't know. I wear my mask. I don't know if you do, but when I'm out in a enclosed environment, I put on my mask still because I want to take care of you, care for you, you care for me. Even if you don't care for me, I'm caring for you. So I just want to put that little bit of information out there into the atmosphere, and then we're going to dive in. So let me tell you about Elise. Elise is a practicing dietitian, and she has been doing that for approximately 40 years. 6 of those years has been at the Center for Family and Child Enrichment, which we commonly call CFCE. She received her bachelor's degree at the University of Dayton and completed her dietetic internship locally at Jackson Memorial Hospital in Miami. She has worked in many areas of nutrition, such as wellness, diabetes, oncology, culinary nutrition. We have to talk about that. I love that. Behavioral health, women's health, and integrative health. In addition, Elise is a diabetes education, having completed training at the Joslin Center in Boston. With the increasing number of gestational diabetes, she recently decided to become a certified prenatal nutritionist. You may recognize her from her appearances on South Florida's PBS Health Channel, speaking about a variety of nutrition topics. Welcome, Elise. Welcome to Live Healthy Miami Gardens. And we are so blessed and honored to have you here. So do you want to say anything before we get started? We're just going to have a natural conversation and talk about wellness and how we stay well.
Well, I love what you said. I mean, COVID is here to stay, and the numbers may have gone down, but I just know a month ago, so many people from my church came down with COVID, so it's still around, and we know a little more about it than we did back in 2019.
Yeah. And my office, we're in my office here. I have 5 ladies working in my office, including myself. And 2 of them had COVID within the last 3 weeks.
Yes.
And we were just fortunate enough that the rest of us didn't catch it. I know everyone in here is vaccinated, but they were out and about and they caught it somewhere.
Exactly.
And thank God we didn't, they didn't feel well and they tested positive, so they stayed home and they recovered, and we all retested. The 3 of us that were left in the office all retested, and thank God we were negative.
But and that's a great example of being responsible, staying home, when you're sick, testing right away. Awesome. I love hearing that.
Absolutely. And the other thing that we have to be mindful, I know I'm always washing my hands. I wash my hands. I would rather wash with soap and water than take all that antibacterial stuff, because
awesome. I love that.
Your immune system if you keep doing that.
You're absolutely right.
Soap and water is your best friend.
I love that. You're absolutely 100% correct.
So the first question I want to ask you, Elise, is can diet quality protect against COVID-19 If so, how?
Yes. Back, I worked for a health system back when COVID started, and we were tasked with explaining more about COVID nutrition. Back then, there was no information about that.
Mm.
It was, basically people were fearful of getting COVID from fruits and vegetables. So we had to dispel that. So fast forward a few years later, there's so many interesting studies now. There's a big study from the British Medical Journal called Gut, and they looked at 600,000 people, a little less than 600. And they found that when people ate more fruits, vegetables, legumes, they had a 9% lower risk of getting COVID, and a 41% risk of lowering their risk of severe COVID. So we do know that there's a lot of studies showing that eating more plant-based diet, it doesn't necessarily have to be vegan, and I'll explain that, but a plant-based diet can lower your risk. It's not going to like cure you or prevent you from getting COVID. I don't know that there's anything, with food that we can't say that there's anything that's going to prevent you from getting COVID, but it will lower your risk. It will support your immune system. And more importantly, hopefully keep you out of the hospital too. But definitely eating those plants.
Plants and veggies and legumes. Stay
Absolutely.
off of the fatties. Well, there's good fats too, Elise, and
Right.
we need to, when we talk about staying away from fats, we need to make a distinction between the good fats and the fats we need to stay away from. What would you recommend to our listeners and our viewers?
Good fats are, my favorite is olive oil, but you have to buy good quality olive oil. Sometimes there's these olive oils are mixed in with other oils, and if you buy it in a glass bottle, that's not good. If you're keeping it near the stove, that's not good. Olive oil is sensitive to heat,
Yes.
age, and temperature. So
Hmm.
olive oil, avocado, nuts, those are all good sources of fat. The saturated fat, we need a little in our diet, but those are things like in sour cream, cheese, cream cheese, gravies. Those are the ones that are possibly, if you have too much, more inflammatory. And think of
Mm,
COVID, you're in an inflamed state already. Why are you going to
right.
cause more inflammation? But yes, we definitely need fat in our diet, but the good quality fat, that's what's important.
So, am I hearing from what you're saying about sour cream and cream cheese and cheese? Am I hearing a dairy sensitivity that we need to be aware of, that we need to reduce, cut out, or reduce is fine?
Well, there's a lot of controversy about dairy, but those are more the saturated fats. Those, but gravies, I would include that too. But technically, coconut oil actually is a saturated fat. A lot of people use a lot of coconut oil, thinking that's a healthy oil. So it's more of the way it's the nutrition component of it.
Hmm. And I think also coconut oil has a higher flash point, so it's easier to cook with coconut oil.
Yeah, it has a higher cooking point. So you absolutely, so, like I said, you can have a little saturated fat. We try to keep it, the American Heart Association keeps it to under 10% of your calories. Sometimes if people have high cholesterol, I'll lower it even more than that. But yeah, a little coconut oil, as long as you include that in your saturated fat intake.
Hmm.
But a lot of people, they read stuff on the internet, it's good for the brain, or and they're cooking all their food in coconut oil. That's different. That's different.
Well, I don't know for everyone else, but for me, I don't fry a lot. So I don't use a lot of oil. And then a friend gifted me an air fryer, and that is like the best thing ever.
Yeah, yeah.
But being from the islands, we tend to cook a lot in oil, and that's just not
Yes,
something that I do, because I find that the things that we brown in oil, I can brown under the broiler in the oven.
exactly.
And then we have a dish we call brown stew chicken and the brown stew fish. Well, fish maybe not a good example, but the chicken, for example, I would brown it in the broiler, then put it in the stew it down. without having the additional oil, because all meat has oil.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
and we just have
Exactly.
to
It's really
learn
those ultra refined oils you want to stay away from.
it.
That's why I'm a big fan of avocado oil. That has a higher smoking point. And again, a little coconut oil is okay if you're going to fry, but just a small amount. And olive oil is my favorite. If you get a good quality olive oil, there's studies done on brain health, immunity. They're just so rich in polyphenols.
Yes.
So there's some oils out there that I actually recommend because they're like 8 times the amount of polyphenol. So they tend to be more expensive, but you're
Right.
getting so many of those fantastic nutrients.
Well, I heard that the oils from Morocco have some of the highest polyphenols because of the desert condition, and the olives still mature and grow and proliferate under those harsh conditions. So the polyphenol levels tend to be higher in
And
those types of oils that grow in that condition. So I shopped until I found one, and I did.
yes, and I've read that, and I think that came from Dr. Gundry and his
Yes.
book.
But
But
I
I
didn't, I got his, but I actually found one in the market.
yes, well, actually, a friend of mine told me, and I haven't looked at it, but I choose ones that where they can give me the polyphenol and all the nutrients that are in it, so I know for a fact before I recommend. I want to make sure they're getting the health benefits if they're going to pay the
Right.
extra money. But yeah, that may be the case.
And I think in terms of when we talk about nutrition and fighting COVID-19, we talked a lot about that. But do you have a recommendation on what people should eat or drink if they have COVID, and what to eat if you have no appetite? Because I know with the new variants right now, it's not all the same symptoms. Whereas we used to have loss of
Right.
appetite, we may not have that. But if you do have loss of appetite, what should we eat, and what should we eat when we're in the midst of COVID?
Well, first of all, that's a really good point that you said because I'm seeing people sometimes for long-term COVID, and
Mm,
it could have been hair loss, but now some neurologists are recommending patients to me because they have neurological symptoms, they have gut issues. So it kind of depends on where I'm going to target. If it's the gut, I'm going to try and heal the gut. But in general, the most important thing I think when you get any virus is addressing dehydration. I get worried when people get dehydrated. So, if you can go on the internet and find like signs and symptoms of dehydration, but if you notice your urine stronger smell, more concentrated, fatigue, confusion, I tell those patients go contact your doctor right away. Um,
mm,
but if your lack of appetite, maybe start with small frequent meals.
mm.
Again, like the broths are really good for hydration, maybe a nice homemade bone broth. And if you can stick a few vegetables in it, if you can stick some meat in it, that's great. But try to also like the nutrients that come up with COVID are vitamin C. And I'm not saying go take supplements. Because there have been friends and family have kind of gone crazy with the supplements. Anyway, vitamin D, protein, and zinc. So the vitamin D, there have been studies about that in COVID. So I encourage everyone to go to their doctor and check their vitamin D level, not to take vitamin D supplements unless your doctor has prescribed them. Ask what your vitamin D is because 30 is considered normal. I like to see 40 to 60 with most patients. So, but again, this is things to have a discussion with your physician. So we know when people have better vitamin D levels, they also seem to do better with COVID. But vitamin C foods, kiwi is really great. Berries, oranges, a half a cup of red pepper has 95 milligrams of vitamin C. So you
Bell
don't.
pepper, when you say red pepper, you're
Yes,
talking bell
yes.
pepper?
So a
Not the
lot
hot stuff.
yeah, well, the red pepper, that's a red pepper, I guess you'd call it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so most people do food first unless you really have a deficiency.
Hmm.
But zinc was another one. People were taking a lot of zinc supplements. They don't understand when you take zinc, it competes with iron, it competes with copper, so you could be messing up something else. Again, unless you have a zinc deficiency, but lean meats are really good in zinc. Pumpkin seeds are good in zinc.
Mm.
But those are the vitamins and minerals we think of: vitamin D, vitamin C, and zinc. It's a lot more than that, but that's where I usually start off with when I have a patient. And again, I
Right.
focus on what the area is, where are they having the problems.
Now, I know everything begins with in the gut, and
Yes, yes.
inflammation starts in the gut. And you were talking about gut health.
Uh-huh.
What do we need to know about gut health? What are the signs of an unhealthy gut, an inflamed gut that we could look for? Because I think most people have unhealthy gut.
I
We've
do
just been
too. I do
mistreating our
too.
bodies for so long through food that I
So
really.
the food is so, especially if you're eating ultra processed food, the food is ultra processed that most people are eating. They call the standard American diet the SAD diet, SAD, which is kind of sad. But you may have like gastric distress, you may have bloating, you may have a lot of gas. But sometimes, believe it or not, it may not show up in like GI problems. It may be like brain fog, or it could
Mhm.
be other symptoms that could be affecting your gut. And we know about 70, maybe as possibly as high as 80% of your immune system is in your gut.
Yep.
So if we can help and improve your gut health, it makes sense that we're going to improve like your overall health in general. So absolutely, I always try to focus on the gut. And that's where the plant-based diet, and not vegan, plant-based, is really powerful. It provides fiber, provides those plant
Yes.
chemicals, phytochemicals. So that actually can help with the gut problems. You may notice some problems with like emulsifiers if you have bad gut health, certain like carrageenan. I've had people, and it was just that they were eating foods with carrageenan, they had digestive issues. So,
Like,
um,
would that be what, carrots? What's cat?
no,
what's the?
carrageenan is an additive. And I think in a lot of almond milks, it was found in almond milks,
Really?
ice cream. So I think a lot of places are starting to take it out of their foods. But any of these gums, any of these emulsifiers, additives, those can contribute just to poor health, inflammation, gut health, poor gut health.
When you
I
say
usually
gums, you mean like the xanthan gum and all?
Yes, yeah. So like guar gum, start with like getting rid of those ultra processed foods. And what do I mean by ultra processed? I mean, if you read the label and you say, "Oh my gosh, it's got so many ingredients and I don't know what any like a lot of these are," that's chances are that's ultra processed food.
Right,
So I would start there and work on more of clean eating.
right. And as you said, it's not vegan, but balance it. Not
Yes,
meat every day, not chicken every day. I mean, everything. The food that we eat is really devoid of a lot of nutrients nowadays. So
yes.
we just have to be very careful about what we eat and how we eat.
And with the absolutely, and because there's so many toxins that we have to be more proactive. There are more viruses, so when I grew
Mhm.
up, more diseases, so we have to be more proactive. In I never want to say boost your immune system, support your immune system. That's the goal. But yes, actually, it's just small dietary changes can make a big impact.
I believe, and water, hydrate too, right?
Yes, yes. So
Good
many
old
people,
water.
if someone's having headaches, or there's so many symptoms that it could be dehydration. And
Mhm.
we live in South Florida. So be conscientious about drinking water.
And the other thing that you were, and speaking of South Florida and sun, we know we get vitamin D from the sun, but so many of us are are devoid of our vitamin D.
Mhm.
And what foods? Because I take, and then the other side too. You hear so many people, like you said, vitamin D became the wonder vitamin for COVID, and it is not a water soluble vitamin. It's a oil
Absolutely.
soluble.
It's a
So we
fat
have
soluble vitamin.
that. So we need to be careful how much of the vitamin D we take because
Exactly,
that
because
can
you could overdose on it. But like you said, we get some with a little sunshine, 15 minutes. We get it in salmon is a great food because you get the fatty acids, you get vitamin
Mhm.
D, eggs. What I do see, a lot of people, they take the vitamin D incorrectly. And what I mean by, just like you said, it's a fat soluble vitamin. So if you're taking it maybe with a piece of fruit in the morning, there's no fat in that fruit. It needs fat to be soluble. So have
Oh,
it with an egg or some peanut butter, something with fat, and you're going to get more of your money's worth with
wow.
that vitamin D. So,
You know, that is something that I've heard, not just with vitamin D, but I think a lot of us, when we take supplements, we're not taking them correctly. So, for instance, I'd heard that magnesium affects your cholesterol, the absorption of your cholesterol medicine in your body, or something to that effect. I don't know what the true problem is with that, but I had heard that it can be counteractive to some of the statins that you use for cholesterol. Have
I've
you heard
never
that?
heard that. I've never heard that. Magnesium is responsible for 300 enzymatic processes, but there are different types of magnesium, magnesium citrate, glycinate. There are a whole bunch of
Mm,
different ones. So it depends what you're trying to target. Are you trying to target like constipation or improving sleep? Or so that with statins, I usually most people need like a little more CoQ10, but I always tell
mm,
them check with their doctor because some of the statins will deplete the CoQ10.
mm, mm.
Yeah.
But back to COVID and what we need to do, and we also were talking about. Well, we talked about nutrition center tips to build back strength after. But as far as nutrition tips for seniors, children, and pregnant women suffering from or recovering from COVID, what would be your top 3 to 5 tips that you would tell people that they need to do after? It doesn't have to go to 5, even if it's 1 or 2.
Um, that's kind of hard because they're they're different parts of their life. Like seniors, if a senior has COVID, I'm concerned because do they have a support system? Do they have someone
Mm,
cooking their food? If they live alone, then that could be a concern because obviously when you're sick, you don't feel like cooking all this good
exactly.
healthy food. So seniors, I like to recommend sometimes maybe keeping some homemade soups, really good things in the freezer, especially if they live alone, or maybe making some meatballs with a lot of vegetables in it or something like that, because so they can have that in the freezer. Kids, kids are finicky and all the healthy foods they don't want to eat. So you kind of have to be creative. You can do like maybe some veggie muffins or, do like watermelon cutouts or something like that. Sometimes these nice ice creams you see on the internet, they start out with frozen bananas and a little almond milk, and you
Mm.
some walnuts in and so it's like an ice cream, so that might be refreshing with the kids. And pregnant women, I would just recommend all the stuff I would in pregnancy, making sure they're getting adequate fruits and vegetables with the emphasis on folic acid. So they're really different people, but I still would promote more plants, getting rid of ultra processed foods, um, the checking the vitamin D and concentrating on those certain, zinc foods, maybe vitamin C foods, things of that nature. One thing, when you remind me about the seniors, there was a study done. It's really talking about the vaccine, and I thought it was kind of interesting. It was a British Journal of Nutrition, and they found that they did a study and they on seniors, and once they got the vaccine, they found that when seniors had taken a multivitamin before the vaccine and after, it actually optimized the COVID-19 vaccine in seniors.
Wow.
So I thought that was a really interesting point. So what they said was, this was over in Britain, and they said they suggest the pharmaceutical companies give a 45-day multivitamin with the vaccine, which I thought was brilliant. So take before and after the vaccine. So I thought that was
So
kind
like
of,
maybe if you know you're up for your booster, like maybe what, 5 days before, or is that adequate? Or is
it
it
was
just
really with the vaccine, but I think it's a good point. I probably would do it with the booster. Now, again, check with your doctor, because I don't know if anyone has liver disease or kidney disease.
right, right.
You can't take a multivitamin. But I thought that was very, very good. And the study was done on seniors, because
Mhm.
they probably are a little deficient in some vitamins and minerals. So I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah. I know the level of seniors that are taking their booster shots has decreased in Florida. That was reported a couple weeks ago.
Oh,
That
interesting.
level has decreased, which is concerning because they are probably the highest risk group for serious illness with
Yeah.
COVID. So I guess for them, if they're not following up with their boosters, they really need to focus on nutrition to really boost their immune systems as much
Support, support.
support
I
their
don't like
immune
the word
system.
boost, because I think of autoimmunity or something like that.
Right,
But I would
right.
add to that, the immune system's really complex. So they're like pillars if you're in a building. So nutrition's a really good, strong, solid pillar. But don't forget about exercise and sleep. Sleep is really important
Yes.
for your immune system. Not smoking, not drinking too much. All those put together is going to really be powerful and support your immune system the best it can.
And what you said was key a while ago with sleep. I'm a big proponent of sleep. I tell everybody I get 8 hours sleep, or I strive for 8 hours. I don't
Me
always
too.
achieve it. I
Yeah.
mean, sometimes I go to bed early thinking, if I get in bed by 10 and I'm awake by 6, even if I don't get up, I still want to get my 7, 8 hours in. But there are a lot of times I don't, I'm in bed, but I wake up, I can't go back to sleep. And this is something new for me. I've never had that problem. And it does affect mood.
Yes.
So,
An appetite, actually.
yeah.
Mhm.
And is there a food or a fruit or something that you would recommend us eating to give us a little bit more energy when for lack of the total sleep that we need each night? Because I tell everybody, listen, you're like a wireless battery recharging. You can't recharge the same cells all the time. They'll eventually die. You have to recharge the whole battery. And that's
Right.
from sleep. That's when the cells rejuvenate, and that's what you need to do.
Exactly. So
So
it's
if
good for brain health too, not diabetes also. So
yeah,
sleep is really, we do not take sleep seriously in this country, and that's really a form of your medicine. But
mm-hmm.
yeah, there are a few things to improve the sleep. Obviously, most people know, like, turn off the all the technology 2 hours before, darken the
And
room.
the TV.
But yeah, so those things. But you can do, like, maybe, sometimes I notice with diet histories, people are eating a lot of sugary foods right before bedtime.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely not. You might have been able to do that when you were younger, but maybe when you're older. So watch all the sweets. I do like tart cherries. I find sometimes it helps people with gout. It helps with sleep. So they say tart cherry juice, but I don't know. That's kind of I'd rather you have the cherry, so you're not getting all that
The
sugar.
sugar.
Sometimes
What about this tart cherries at night for someone like me that's a type 2 diabetic? That'll probably not be a good idea.
it's a fruit, and so it could spike your blood sugar, probably would. But you could try it maybe with the dinner meal. But in your case, I might look at, maybe ask the doctor if you could take a little magnesium before bedtime.
Mm,
Sometimes when people take their vitamin D before bedtime, that could help with sleep. Again, I'm giving ideas, because you
right,
also
right.
have to check with your physician. But taking a good Epsom salt bath, that's also like a cup of Epsom salt. That's very relaxing, and then you absorb that magnesium.
Yeah. Well, we're almost done. We've got about 15 seconds left to say goodbye. Is there any parting words you want to tell us? Because we're going to be out in 10 seconds.
Oh, no, just, stay healthy and really just make simple changes to improve your diet. Take the
Okay.
meat off.
Yes. Well, that's all we have for today, folks. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, Elise, for coming in and sharing, imparting such great wisdom to us,
Oh,
because we should eat to live and not live to
yes,
eat. And
exactly.
it's important that we have our nutrition correct and our sleep correct. So thank you so much for coming on to this episode of Live Healthy Miami Gardens Facebook Live, and sharing all of your expertise with us and our listeners and viewers.
Oh,
And
thank you, Karen.
thank you. And that's it, folks. Thank you for tuning in. It was scrolling across the bottom that if you needed to get in touch with Elise for any information, she's at the Center for Family and Children Enrichment in Miami
Miami
Gardens,
Gardens,
at
yes.
that 1825 Northwest 167th Street, Suite 102. And you can always reach them at cfcecares.org.
Yeah.
Thank you and have a beautiful day. And as Melissa says, be kind and gracious to yourself. Bye bye.
Awesome. Bye-bye. Bye.